Minho sat in the back row of the classroom, watching the holographic display float in the center of the room. The image showed a massive warship, rotating slowly so everyone could see every angle. Blue lights traced along its hull, marking the shield generators. Red lines showed where the weapons were mounted. It was beautiful in a deadly sort of way. The classroom was huge, designed to hold students from dozens of different alien species. Some students sat in chairs like Minho did. Others floated in special tanks of liquid. A few hung from the ceiling on perches. There were exactly 80 students in advanced warship design, and Minho was one of only 5 humans. Commander Velthar stood beside the hologram. He was tall, covered in dark green scales, with golden eyes that missed nothing. He had been teaching at the Galactic Naval Academy for over 100 years. His tail swayed slowly as he talked, a sign that he was relaxed and confident. "This is the Defender Pattern 7, the commander said. His voice was deep and smooth. "It is the standard destroyer used by the Galactic Coalition. Every species in this room has ships based on this design. It represents 800 years of advancement in warfare technology." Minho leaned forward slightly. He had been studying these schematics for 3 days, preparing for this class. Something about the design bothered him, but he had not been able to put his finger on it until now. Commander Velthar continued. "The Defender Pattern 7 can travel faster than light for 6 weeks without refueling. Its main weapon can punch through a small moon. The shield generators create an overlapping field that can withstand direct hits from plasma cannons. It is, simply put, the perfect balance of speed, firepower, and defense." Around the room, students nodded. Some took notes on their data tablets. Others whispered to each other in languages Minho did not understand. He heard someone behind him say something that his translator turned into magnificent engineering. Hana, another human student, sat 3 seats away from Minho. She caught his eye and smiled. She knew him well enough to see that he was thinking hard about something. She raised an eyebrow as if asking a question. Minho shook his head slightly. "Not yet. The key innovation," Commander Velthar said, zooming the hologram in on the middle section of the ship, "is the shield coverage. Notice how the generators are positioned here, here, and here. 3 points on the ship lit up in bright blue. They create fields that overlap, ensuring complete protection. This is why modern warships no longer need heavy armor plating. The shields do all the work." That was it. That was what had been bothering Minho. He looked at the gaps between the shield generators. The hull there was thin, made of light metal designed to reduce weight. There was no armor, just the basic structure of the ship. According to the design philosophy, the shields would always protect those areas. Minho raised his hand. Commander Velthar looked surprised. Human students rarely spoke up in class during their first year. They were too busy trying to learn everything about galactic technology. "Yes, Cadet Minho? Commander, I have a question about the design." "Of course, that is why we are here." Minho stood up, as was proper when addressing an instructor. He felt 80 pairs of eyes turned toward him. Some of those eyes were not even on faces that looked anything like human faces. "Why are your warships missing armor here?" He pointed at the hologram. At the thin sections between the shield generators. The classroom went completely silent. Commander Velthar's scales rippled slightly. It was a sign of confusion among his species. "Missing armor?" "Cadet, the shields protect those sections. The overlapping fields ensure that no weapon can reach the hull there." "But what if the shields fail?" Minho asked. A few students made sounds that might have been laughter. One alien near the front, a floating creature that looked like a jellyfish made of light, actually did laugh out loud. The sound came through Minho's translator as tinkling bells, but he knew mockery when he heard it. Commander Velthar was more polite. "The shields do not fail, Cadet. They are powered by 3 independent reactors. Even if one fails, the others maintain the field. We have been using this technology for hundreds of years. But in combat..." Minho pressed on, feeling his face get warm. "Things go wrong. Power fluctuates. Ships maneuver. What happens if there is even a small gap in coverage? Then the backup systems activate within microseconds, the commander said. His tail was no longer swaying. It was perfectly still now, which Minho had learned meant the commander was getting annoyed. Cadet Minho, I understand that humans are new to space warfare. Your species only joined the coalition 50 years ago. But we have been fighting in space for millennia. We know what works. Hana raised her hand. Commander. If I may add something? Velthar nodded, though his expression suggested he was not happy about where this was going. Earth military history shows that single-point failures are extremely dangerous, Hannah said. Our old ocean ships used multiple layers of defense. Shields, yes. But also armor. And compartmentalized hulls. And redundant systems. We call it defense in depth. Your ocean ships, said the jellyfish student, whose name was Bright Edge, moved through water. Space combat is different. The principle is the same, Minho said. If you depend on one system, and that system fails, you lose everything. If you have multiple systems, you have time to react, time to survive. Commander Velthar held up one clawed hand. Enough. This is an interesting discussion. But we must move on. However, Cadet Minho, since you seem so concerned about this, I have an assignment for you. You will redesign the Defender Pattern 7 using your human redundancy theory. You will add armor to these sections without reducing the ship's speed or firepower. You have 2 weeks. If you can do it, perhaps we will all learn something. If you cannot, perhaps you will learn something instead. It was clearly meant to be impossible. Adding armor meant adding weight. Adding weight meant slower speeds. Slower speeds meant death in space combat. Every student in the room knew this. Minho could see it in their faces, or the alien equivalent of faces. Yes, sir, Minho said quietly. He sat back down. The lecture continued. But Minho barely heard it. He was already thinking about the assignment. Hana passed him a note on her data tablet. It said, "We can do this. Meet me after class." In the front row, Bright Edge had stopped glowing quite so brightly. The crystalline alien was very still, which for their species meant they were thinking deeply. After a moment, Bright Edge sent a message to Minho's tablet too. I would like to help with your project, if you will have me. Minho smiled slightly. Maybe he was not as alone as he thought. The hologram continued to rotate in the center of the room, showing the beautiful, deadly warship. The gaps in its armor seemed bigger now that Minho had pointed them out. He wondered if anyone else was seeing them the way he did. Commander Velthar was still lecturing, but his voice seemed far away. Minho was already designing in his head, already thinking about how to make these ships safer. The galaxy might not want to listen to a human cadet, but he was going to try anyway, because in 200 years of peace, everyone had forgotten one simple truth that humans knew well. In war, everything that can go wrong will go wrong, and when it did, armor might be the only thing standing between a crew and the cold darkness of space. The design lab was empty when Minho arrived. It was late in the station's night cycle, when most students were either sleeping or socializing in the recreation areas. The lab's lights came on automatically as he walked in, revealing rows of holographic workstations and fabrication equipment. Minho chose a station near the back and loaded the Defender Pattern 7 schematics. The warship appeared in front of him, floating at chest height, slowly rotating. He reached out and touched the hologram, stopping its rotation. His fingers passed through light, but the sensors read his movements, and the ship responded. You are here early, a voice said behind him. Minho turned to see Bright Edge floating into the lab. The crystalline alien glowed softly in the dim lighting, casting rainbow patterns on the walls. During the day, Bright Edge was almost too bright to look at directly, but now the alien had dimmed to a comfortable level. I could not sleep, Minho admitted. I keep thinking about the problem. As do I, Bright Edge said, moving closer to the workstation. Commander Velthar meant this assignment to be a lesson in humility. He expects you to fail. I know, but you do not plan to fail. No, Minho said. I do not. Hana arrived a few minutes later, carrying 3 containers of coffee. She handed one to Minho and set another down near Bright Edge. "I was not sure if your species drinks coffee," she said to the alien. Bright Edge's glow shifted to a warmer color, which Minho had learned meant pleasure or appreciation. "We do not drink, but the gesture is kind." "Thank you." Hana pulled up a chair and looked at the hologram. "So, armor. The problem is mass, right? We add armor plates to these weak sections, and the ship becomes too heavy. It cannot accelerate as fast. It becomes an easy target. That is what everyone will expect us to fail on," Minho agreed. "So we cannot just add standard armor plates. What did humans use on Earth?" Bright Edge asked. "Before you joined the coalition?" Minho pulled up some files from Earth's military database. Images appeared next to the alien warship. Old Earth spacecraft, some barely 50 years old. Others dating back 100 years to when humans first started seriously militarizing space. "We used layered armor," Minho explained. "Not just one thick plate, but multiple thin layers with space between them. When something hits the first layer, it breaks apart. The pieces spread out. By the time they hit the next layer, they have less force." "Reactive armor," Hana added. "Some of our designs used plates that would actually explode outward when hit, pushing the incoming fire away from the ship." Bright Edge pulsed with interest. "And this weighs less than solid armor?" Much less," Minho said. "But the Coalition does not use it, because they believe shields make armor unnecessary. They removed all that mass to make ships faster. So, we put it back," Hana said. "But we do it smart." They worked through the night. Minho designed the armor layout, using principles from Earth's naval history but adapting them with materials from the Coalition database. Hana calculated the mass distribution, finding ways to balance the added weight. Bright Edge, whose species had invented some of the Coalition's best energy diffusion technology, suggested ways to make the armor actually strengthen the shield coverage, rather than just backing it up. The solution came together slowly. They started with the most vulnerable sections, the gaps between shield generators. Thin composite plates, made from a mix of Terran steel alloys and luminar crystal matrices. Between the plates, they added a reactive gel that would harden instantly when hit, absorbing impact energy. "But we still have the weight problem," Hana said around midnight. The coffee was long gone, and she looked exhausted. "We have added 8% more mass to the ship. That translates to slower acceleration, longer response times." Minho stared at the design, frustrated. She was right. In space combat, being 8% slower was the same as being dead. Enemy ships would dance around them, hitting them from angles they could not respond to fast enough. "What if," Bright Edge said slowly, "we do not add weight? What if we redistribute it?" "What do you mean?" Minho asked. The crystalline alien reached into the hologram and highlighted several sections of the ship. "These are decorative. The Coalition designs ships to be beautiful as well as functional. These curved sections here, this extended sensor pod, these wing-like structures that help with atmospheric flight. They add mass but provide little benefit in deep space combat." Minho felt something click in his mind. "We remove them. We make the ship less pretty but more practical." "Yes, and we use that saved mass for armor." They redesigned the hull over the next 3 hours, stripping away everything that was not essential. The resulting ship looked different from the elegant Defender Pattern 7. It was blocky, utilitarian, almost ugly. But the numbers told a different story. By dawn, they had a working design. The ship, which they called the Defender Pattern 7H, had the same mass as the original. It had the same acceleration and maneuverability. It had the same weapons and shields. But now it also had layered composite armor, protecting every critical section. Hana ran combat simulations, creating scenarios where shields failed or fluctuated. The original Defender took critical damage in 80% of the tests. The modified version survived 95% of them. "We did it," she said, disbelieving. "We actually did it." Minho did not share her celebration yet. "Now we have to present it to the class." To Commander Velthar. The next 2 weeks were intense. They refined the design, ran more simulations, prepared their presentation. Word had spread through the academy about the human cadet who had questioned the commander. Some students came to see their work. Most were skeptical. A few were actively hostile. "You think you know better than 800 years of galactic warfare?" one student demanded. He was a Saurian, like Commander Velthar, but younger, with bright red scales. His name was Corvin, and he was at the top of their class. "Humans have been in space for barely a century. We have been fighting wars among the stars since before your species invented the wheel." Minho did not argue. He just showed Corvan the simulations. The Saurian watched the combat scenarios play out. His face was hard to read, but his tail stopped moving. That meant he was thinking seriously. Finally, he said, "The design is clever, but it is a solution looking for a problem. Our shields do not fail. This is unnecessary." "I hope you are right," Minho said quietly. "I truly do." Presentation day arrived. The classroom was packed. Students from other classes had come to watch. Even some of the instructors were there, curious to see what the human cadet had done. Commander Velthar stood at the front of the room, his expression neutral. "Cadet Minho, Cadet Hana, and I see you have recruited Bright Edge as well. Please, show us your design." Minho stepped forward. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. He brought up the hologram of the Defender Pattern 7H and began to explain. He talked about defense in depth. He showed the layered armor design. He explained how they had redistributed mass rather than adding it. Hana presented the simulation data. Bright Edge discussed the technical innovations they had incorporated. The room was silent as they worked through the presentation. Minho could not tell if it was the silence of respect or the silence before mockery. When they finished, Commander Velthar studied the hologram for a long moment. Then he said, "The technical work is excellent. You have clearly put significant effort into this project. The design is sound, and your simulations are properly conducted." Minho felt a small surge of hope. "However," the commander continued, and that hope died. "This is a solution to a problem that does not exist. We have not lost a coalition destroyer to shield failure in peacetime in 180 years. Yes, your armor would help if shields failed, but shields do not fail. You have over-engineered a solution based on fear rather than data." "With respect, sir," Minho said, "we only have data on peacetime. In real combat, against an unexpected enemy or new weapons. Real combat follows the same physical laws as simulation." Commander Velthar interrupted. "You passed this assignment, Cadet Minho. Your technical execution is flawless, but understand that practical warfare has moved beyond the need for such paranoid redundancy. We are not humans fighting each other with primitive weapons on a single planet. We are a galactic civilization with technology refined over millennia." The class was dismissed. As students filed out, a few congratulated Minho on the quality of his work. Most ignored him. Corvan walked past and said, "Clever designs mean nothing if they solve imaginary problems." That night, Minho sat in his quarters, staring at the hologram of the Defender Pattern 7H. It rotated slowly on his desk display. He had proven he could do it. He had created a better design, but no one wanted it. No one believed it was necessary. Hana sent him a message. "We did good work. That is enough." Bright Edge's message was different. "Sometimes being right is not enough. Sometimes you must wait for the galaxy to catch up to you." Minho hoped he would not have to wait long, but more than that, he hoped he was wrong. He hoped the shields never failed. He hoped no one ever needed the armor he had designed, because if he was right, it would mean people were going to die first. 2 months passed since the presentation. Minho tried to forget about the armor design and focus on his other classes. He studied energy weapons theory, learned about faster-than-light navigation, and practiced combat simulations. The academy kept all students busy, from dawn to dusk, but he could not completely let it go. Sometimes, late at night, he would pull up news reports from the border territories. He would read about pirate raids, small skirmishes, minor conflicts. He would look at the damage reports from ships that survived combat. Most of the time, the shields held. But occasionally, just occasionally, he would read about a ship that took damage after a shield generator failed. Usually, the crew survived. Usually, the training cruise was announced in the third month. All senior-level students would spend 6 weeks aboard the CSS Eternal Vigilance, a coalition dreadnought. It was the traditional final phase of their academy education. They would observe real operations, practice their specialties under actual conditions, and learn what it meant to serve in the fleet. Minho was excited. He had never been on a ship that large. The Eternal Vigilance was 2 kilometers long, with a crew of 3,000 from dozens of species. It carried 6 destroyer escorts and had enough firepower to flatten a small continent. "Are you nervous?" Hana asked as they packed their gear. "A little," Minho admitted. "You?" "Terrified," she said with a smile. But the good kind of terrified. They boarded a shuttle with 80 other students. The flight to the Eternal Vigilance took 6 hours. When they finally saw the dreadnought through the viewport, Minho felt his breath catch. The ship was enormous, dark gray against the stars, covered in weapon ports and sensor arrays. Smaller ships moved around it like fish around a whale. The students were given quarters in the aft section of the ship. Minho shared a room with 3 other cadets, none of them human. One was a floating luminar like Bright Edge, though this one was named Clear Thought. The others were species Minho had learned about but never lived with before. Their training schedule was intense. They worked 8-hour shifts, rotating through different departments. Minho spent time in engineering, weapons control, navigation, and damage control. He learned how a real warship operated, how thousands of beings worked together to keep the massive vessel running. Commander Velthar was aboard as well, serving as the liaison between the students and the ship's regular crew. He was professional and distant with Minho, never mentioning the armor design. It was as if that whole incident had never happened. 3 weeks into the cruise, everything changed. Minho was in engineering, learning about the reactor systems. When the alert sounded, it was not a drill. He could tell by the way the regular crew moved, by the tension in their voices, by the way Chief Engineer Dae Jung, one of the few human senior officers, immediately started barking orders. "All students to observation stations," the ship-wide announcement said. "This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Minho ran to the nearest observation deck. Other students were already there, pressing against the windows or staring at the holographic displays. Hana found him in the crowd. "What is happening?" "I do not know," Minho said. A display activated, showing the bridge. Captain Theron, a massive 4-armed Craylon, filled the screen. "Students, pay attention. This is real combat operations. We have received a distress call from the Darvos mining colony. They are under attack by an unknown force. We are responding with 2 destroyer escorts. The Eternal Vigilance will maintain position here. Watch and learn." The display switched to an external view. 2 destroyers, the Swift Justice and the Moral Victory, accelerated away from the dreadnought. They were beautiful ships, sleek and fast, their hulls gleaming in the light of the nearby star. Standard Defender Pattern 7 designs, exactly like the one Minho had studied. "They are heading into the Darvos asteroid field," Bright Edge said. The Luminar had floated up beside Minho. "That is dangerous territory. Many places to hide." The destroyers vanished into the asteroid field. The observation deck was silent as everyone watched the tactical display. The 2 ships appeared as blue dots, weaving between red markers that represented asteroids. Darvos colony was a green dot in the center of the field. "Sensors are detecting weapons fire," someone announced over the comm. "The destroyers are engaging hostile forces." Then everything went wrong. The blue dot representing Swift Justice flickered. An alarm sounded on the tactical display. "Shield failure detected on Swift Justice," a voice shouted. "Multiple EMP mine detonations. Shields are cycling offline." Minho felt ice in his stomach. "No. Not like this." On the display, Swift Justice slowed. Its shields were flickering, trying to reactivate. But in space combat, A few seconds was an eternity. Enemy fire began hitting the destroyer, not on the shields, on the hull, on the unarmored sections between the shield generators, the sections Minho had pointed out in class. The destroyer shuddered as explosions rippled along its lateral hull. Atmosphere vented into space in white clouds. Pieces of armor, the thin, decorative plating, tore away. The ship was not destroyed, but it was crippled, dead in space, bleeding air and power. Moral Victory is moving to assist, the calm voice said. But Moral Victory flew through another cluster of hidden mines. The same thing happened. EMP burst. Shields flickering. Enemy fire tearing into the vulnerable hull sections. The observation deck was chaos now. Students shouting questions. Instructors trying to maintain order. Minho stood frozen, watching the tactical display. He felt Hana grip his arm hard enough to hurt. "You tried to tell them," she whispered. "I should have tried harder," he said. Captain Theron's voice cut through the noise. "All students, remain calm. We are dispatching rescue shuttles. The Eternal Vigilance is too large to safely navigate the asteroid field, but we will recover survivors from both destroyers." Commander Velthar appeared in the observation deck. His scales were pale, his movements jerky. He walked straight to Minho. Their eyes met. The commander opened his mouth, then closed it. What could he say? That Minho had been right? That people had died because they dismissed his concerns? "The armor," Velthar finally said. "Your design. The added protection on those hull sections. Would it have?" "Maybe," Minho said. "I do not know. But maybe they would have had more time. Maybe more crew would have survived." The commander's tail was completely still. "Come with me. The captain needs to see your design." Now, Minho was escorted to the bridge, still wearing his cadet uniform. The bridge was massive, with stations for 50 officers. Screens covered every wall, showing damage reports, tactical data, and the rescue operation in progress. Bodies were being recovered from the destroyers. 73 dead on Swift Justice, 58 on Moral Victory, hundreds more injured. Captain Theron turned his 4 eyes on Minho. The Craolin was 3 meters tall, with crystalline skin that reflected the light from the displays. "You are the human who designed the armor retrofit?" "Yes, sir. Show me." Minho uploaded his design to the bridge holographic system. The Defender Pattern 7H appeared, rotating slowly. He explained the layered armor, the redistributed mass, the redundant protection. His voice shook, but he kept talking. The captain studied the design in silence. Other officers gathered around. Chief Engineer De Jung was there too, his face grim. He nodded as Minho explained the technical details. "Would this have saved them?" Captain Theron asked. "I cannot promise that, sir," Minho said honestly, "but it would have given them more time. The armor would have absorbed some of the hits after the shields failed. Maybe enough time for the shields to reactivate. Maybe enough time to retreat. I do not know, but it would have been better than nothing." The captain was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Commander Velthar, send this design to Fleet Command immediately. Priority Alpha. Include footage of today's engagement and full damage reports. Tell them we need emergency retrofit protocols for all destroyer-class vessels. Now." "Sir, Fleet Command may not," Velthar began. "I do not care what they may or may not do," the captain interrupted. His voice was like thunder. "Today we learned that our doctrine has a fatal flaw. A human cadet saw it. We did not listen. People died. I will not let that happen again. Send the message." "Yes, sir." The captain looked back at Minho. "You are dismissed, cadet, and thank you. You tried to warn us. I am sorry we did not listen sooner." Minho saluted and left the bridge. His legs felt weak. In the corridor outside, he leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. He could still see the destroyers on the tactical display, wounded and bleeding atmosphere into space. Hana found him there. She did not say anything, just stood beside him. 73 people on swift justice, Minho said. 58 on moral victory. I know. If they had listened. If I had convinced them better. If... Stop, Hana said firmly. You did everything you could. You saw the problem. You designed a solution. You presented it. They chose not to listen. That is not your fault. But they are still dead. Yes, and that is terrible. But now maybe others will not die. Your design is going to Fleet Command. They will listen now. You will save lives, Minho. Just not these ones. Clear thought floated up to them. The luminar was dim, barely glowing at all. The rescue operation is complete. Both destroyers are being towed back. The enemy escaped. They used the asteroids to hide their retreat. What kind of enemy uses EMP mines? Minho asked. That is an old tactic. Basic technology. Sometimes old tactics work precisely because everyone has forgotten about them, Clear Thought said. The coalition has grown comfortable. Too comfortable. Today we paid the price for that comfort. Word spread through the student quarters quickly. Everyone knew about Minho's design now. The human who had warned them. Some students apologized. Others avoided him. Not knowing what to say, Corvin, the Saurian who had mocked his design, approached Minho in the dining hall. I was wrong, Corvin said simply. I am sorry. Minho nodded. We all want to believe we are safe. That our technology is perfect. I wish I had been wrong too. That night, Minho could not sleep. He kept thinking about the crew members who had died. He did not know their names. He had not seen their faces. But he knew they were dead because of a design flaw that could have been fixed. He pulled up his terminal and began writing a report. Not a technical document this time. A personal one. He wrote about what he had seen. About the importance of redundancy. About the danger of complacency. He wrote about defense in depth. About learning from history. About questioning assumptions. He sent it to Commander Velthar with a note. Sir, if this helps convince Fleet Command, please use it. These deaths need to mean something. The response came an hour later. Just 2 words. Thank you, Cadet. The Eternal Vigilance remained at Darvos for 3 more days, investigating the attack and securing the colony. Then it turned back toward Coalition space. The training cruise continued, but everything felt different now. The students were quieter. The lessons felt more urgent. Everyone understood that this was not a game. And somewhere in Fleet Command headquarters, admirals were looking at a design created by a human cadet and asking themselves a very uncomfortable question. What else have we been wrong about? The Eternal Vigilance returned to Orbital Prime 5 days later. Minho expected to return to normal academy life, to finish his remaining classes and try to forget what he had seen. Instead, he was summoned to the Commandant's office the morning after they docked. The Commandant's office was at the top of the station's central tower, with windows that looked out over the academy grounds and the construction yards beyond. Admiral Sora sat behind a desk, carved from a single piece of luminar crystal. The Admiral was old, even by luminar standards. Her glow was steady and white. The color of experience and wisdom. Cadet Minho, she said as he entered. Please sit. Minho sat in the chair across from her. He had never been this close to an admiral before. He tried not to look nervous. I have read your design, Admiral Sora said. I have watched the simulations. I have reviewed the combat footage from Darvos. And I have spent the last 3 days in emergency sessions with Fleet Command. Yes, ma'am. We are going to implement your design, she said simply, but not just as an optional modification. As mandatory standard for all destroyer-class vessels in the Coalition fleet, 347 ships will need to be retrofitted. Minho felt dizzy. Ma'am, I did not expect. Neither did we, the Admiral said. But the Darvos attack has changed things. The enemy used old tactics, simple technology, and exposed a weakness we did not know we had, or rather, one we chose to ignore when you pointed it out. She brought up a holographic display. It showed reports from across Coalition space. The attackers are called the Void Reapers. They are a splinter faction, made up of criminals and extremists from a dozen different species. They have been operating in the border territories for 2 years, but we thought they were just pirates, small-time raiders. We were wrong. And the display showed attack patterns, stolen ships, hidden bases. They have been studying coalition warships, learning our tactics, finding our weaknesses. The EMP mines at Darvos were a test. They wanted to see if they could disable our shields. They succeeded, and now they know it works, Minho said quietly. Yes, which means they will use it again. We estimate we have perhaps 2 months before they launch larger attacks. We need your armor design in place before then. Admiral Sora leaned forward. Cadet Minho, you are about to be at the center of a very difficult political situation. There are admirals in Fleet Command who are embarrassed that a student saw something they missed. There are shipyard engineers who resent being told to redesign vessels they built. There are politicians who do not want to spend the money on retrofits. And there are species who do not appreciate humans telling them how to build warships. I understand, ma'am. Do you? Because some of them will try to discredit you. They will say your design is unnecessary, that Darvos was a fluke, that we are overreacting. They will say that adding armor is primitive human thinking, that we should focus on better shields instead. Then maybe they are right, Minho said. Maybe we should focus on shields. Admiral Sora's glow shifted to a warm gold color. It was approval. That is a wise answer. And it brings me to my real question. Would you be willing to work with a team to develop a comprehensive defense strategy? Not just armor, but shields, tactics, training, everything. We need someone who thinks about redundancy and fail-safes. Someone who asks, what if, instead of assuming everything will work perfectly. I am just a cadet, ma'am. You are a human who has survived 10,000 years of your species killing each other on a single planet, the Admiral said bluntly. Your people learned lessons we forgot in our centuries of relative peace. I do not care about your rank. I care about your perspective. Minho thought about the bodies being pulled from swift justice, about the crew of moral victory, about the mistakes that could have been prevented. Yes, ma'am. I will help however I can. Good. Report to Conference Room 7 at 1400 hours. Bring cadets Hannah and Bright Edge. This will require a team effort. The meeting room was full when Minho arrived. 20 beings from a dozen species, ranging from junior officers to senior engineers. Commander Velthar was there, along with Chief Engineer Dae-jung. Captain Theron attended via hologram from the Eternal Vigilance. Admiral Sora stood at the head of the table. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. We have 2 months to retrofit our destroyer fleet and implement new defensive doctrines. This team will coordinate that effort. I know many of you have concerns. Let me address them now. She looked around the room. First, yes, this idea came from a cadet. That does not make it wrong. Second, yes, this will be expensive. Dead crews are more expensive. Third, yes, this represents a change in our fundamental design philosophy. Good. Our philosophy got people killed. Any questions? A Saurian admiral, his scales dark blue with age, raised a claw. With respect, Admiral Sora, are we certain this is not an overreaction? One attack, one new tactic. Should we redesign our entire fleet for that? Admiral Tarek, Sora said patiently. The Void Reapers found a weakness. If we do nothing, they will exploit it again. If we only add armor, they will find something else. We need to change how we think about defense. Cadet Minho, please explain your philosophy. Minho stood. His mouth was dry. These were admirals and senior engineers, beings with centuries of experience. But he had to try. Sirs and madams, I come from a species that fought wars for our entire history. We made every mistake it is possible to make. We built ships that were too fast and fragile. They died. We built ships that were too slow and heavily armored. They died. We built ships that relied on one perfect weapon or one perfect defense. They died. He brought up images from Earth's military history. Old spacecraft. Some successful. Many destroyed. We learned that survival requires layers. Multiple defenses. Redundant systems. If one thing fails, 3 others are there to back it up. We call it defense in depth. The coalition already uses redundant systems, Admiral Tarek objected. We have backup power, backup shields, backup everything. But you assume the backups will work, Hana interjected. She had stood up beside Minho. You assume there will be time for them to activate. You assume the enemy will fight the way you expect. Those are dangerous assumptions. Bright Edge added. The Void Reapers did not fight the way we expected. They used primitive technology precisely because we had stopped defending against it. How many other primitive tactics have we forgotten to defend against? Quote, the room was quiet. Chief Engineer Daejung spoke up. I reviewed the Darvos combat data. The enemy used EMP mines. Yes, but they also used ballistic weapons. Simple, solid projectiles fired at high speed. Our point defense systems were calibrated for energy weapons and missiles. The ballistics got through because we did not expect them. Exactly, Minho said. You optimized your defenses for the threats you knew about. But war is chaos. The enemy will always surprise you. That is why we need multiple layers of different kinds of defense. Ender. Admiral Sora nodded. This team will develop a comprehensive strategy. Armor retrofits are the first step. First, Indrasetan. Armor retrofits are the first step, but we also need to review shield coverage, point defense systems, damage control protocols, and combat tactics. We need to train crews to think about redundancy. We need to ask ourselves constantly, what if this fails? The meeting lasted 4 hours. They divided into working groups. Minho found himself leading the armor retrofit team, despite being the lowest-ranking person in the room. Hana took the weapons group. Bright Edge joined the shield enhancement team. Over the next weeks, Minho barely slept. He worked with engineers from 7 species, each bringing different expertise and perspectives. The Saurians understood structural integrity. The Luminar contributed energy diffusion technology. The humans added lessons from Earth's violent history. Together, they refined the armor design, but they also encountered resistance. Some engineers insisted the old designs were fine. Some politicians complained about the cost. Some admirals worried about looking weak or incompetent for not seeing the problem earlier. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. The Void Reapers attacked again. This time they hit a convoy near the Keltar system. 3 destroyers and 12 freighters. The destroyers were older models, not yet scheduled for retrofit. The Reapers used the same tactics. EMP mines, ballistic weapons, targeting the unarmored hull sections. 2 destroyers were crippled. The third, commanded by a cautious captain who had read Minho's report, had welded spare armor plates over the vulnerable sections in an unauthorized modification. That ship survived and drove off the attackers. The combat footage was shown to Fleet Command. The difference was clear and undeniable. 2 ships dead in space, 1 ship fighting and surviving. The only difference was the armor. After that, the resistance collapsed. Emergency orders went out to all shipyards. The retrofit program was approved with full funding. Additional modifications were authorized based on the team's recommendations. Minho was in the fabrication yard when the first retrofit was completed. The destroyer, Lucky Strike, had been in dock for routine maintenance when the Darvos attack happened. Now it was the first ship to receive the full defensive upgrade. Captain J1, the Lucky Strike's commander, found Minho inspecting the new armor plates. The captain was human, one of the few who had risen to command rank in the Coalition fleet. Cadet Minho? Yes, sir. I wanted to thank you personally, Captain J1 said. My crew is safer because of your work. That matters more than I can say. I just asked a question, sir. A lot of other people did the real work. You asked a question everyone else was afraid to ask, the captain corrected. You challenged 800 years of conventional wisdom. That takes courage. The fleet needs more officers like you. Over the next month, destroyer after destroyer went through the retrofit process. The shipyards worked around the clock. Engineers from dozens of species collaborated on the modifications. The designs evolved and improved with each iteration, but Minho knew it was not enough. The armor was important, but it was just one piece of the puzzle. The real change needed to be in how the fleet thought about defense, about redundancy, about questioning assumptions. He wrote a training manual. Hana helped him compile case studies from human military history. Bright Edge contributed technical analysis. They called it Defense in Depth, a guide to redundant systems and tactical flexibility. Admiral Sora read it and ordered it added to the Academy curriculum. It would be required reading for all command track students. The manual spread through the fleet, copied and shared among officers who wanted to understand the new philosophy. Commander Velthar came to Minho's quarters one evening. The Saurian looked tired, his scales dull. "May I come in?" "Of course, sir." Velthar sat down heavily. "I owe you an apology." "Several apologies, actually. I dismissed your concerns. I made your assignment a punishment, rather than a genuine inquiry. I assumed my experience made me right. People died because of my arrogance." "Sir, you could not have known." "I could have listened," Velthar interrupted. "That is all you asked of me. To listen and consider. I failed to do that. I failed my students. I failed my fleet. I failed the crews who died at Darvos." Minho did not know what to say. Finally, he offered, "But you listened after. You sent my design to Fleet Command. You supported the changes. That counts for something, perhaps. But I learned an important lesson. One I hope to teach to others. Experience is valuable, but it can also make us blind. Sometimes, the newest member of a group sees things the veterans miss. We should welcome those perspectives, not dismiss them." "Yes, sir." Velthar stood to leave, then paused. "You will make an excellent officer, Cadet Minho. The fleet is lucky to have you." After the commander left, Minho sat alone in his quarters. 347 destroyers were being retrofitted. Thousands of crew members would be safer because of the changes. It should have felt like victory, but he still thought about the 73 people who died on swift justice, the 58 on moral victory. The ones who did not live to see the changes. He pulled up their names. The coalition had released the casualty list. He read every name, forcing himself to remember that these were not just numbers. These were people with families, with friends, with dreams. He could not save them. But maybe, just maybe, he could save others. That would have to be enough. 6 months passed. The academy year ended, and graduation approached. Minho spent his final weeks finishing projects, taking exams, and preparing for his first real assignment in the Coalition fleet. The retrofit program continued across the galaxy, with over 200 destroyers now equipped with the enhanced defensive systems. The Void Reapers attacked twice more during those months. Both times, the retrofitted destroyers survived where older vessels would have been crippled. Casualty rates dropped by 60% compared to the Darvos engagement. The new tactical doctrines, emphasizing defensive redundancy and flexible response, became standard training throughout the fleet. But the biggest change was harder to measure. It was in how people thought about their ships, their tactics, their assumptions. Officers began asking questions that once would have seemed strange. What if the shields fail? What if the enemy uses unexpected weapons? What if our assumptions are wrong? "You started a revolution," Hana told Minho one evening as they studied together in the library. "You know that, right?" "I just asked a question," Minho said, not looking up from his datapad. "That is how revolutions start," Bright Edge added. The luminar was floating nearby, dimmed to a soft glow suitable for the library's quiet atmosphere. Someone asks a question nobody else thought to ask, or everyone thought to ask but was afraid to say out loud. 3 days before graduation, Admiral Sora summoned Minho to her office again. He wondered what new crisis had emerged. Instead, he found a celebration. The office was filled with people. Captain J1 from the Lucky Strike was there. along with Commander Velthar and Chief Engineer Dae-jung. Several other senior officers stood around the room. Even some of his fellow students had been invited, including Hana, Bright Edge, and Corvin. "Cadet Minho," Admiral Sora said formally, "please step forward." Minho did, confused. The Admiral held up a small crystal cube. It glowed with internal light. "This is a citation for exceptional service to the Coalition. It is not given lightly. You have demonstrated courage, innovation, and dedication that saved lives and changed our fleet for the better. On behalf of Fleet Command and the Galactic Coalition, thank you." She handed him the cube. It was warm to the touch, pulsing gently with light. Minho felt his throat tighten. "Thank you, ma'am. But I had a lot of help, which is why they are here," the Admiral said, gesturing to the others. "This was a team effort. But you were the one who had the courage to speak up. That matters." Captain J1 stepped forward. "I also have news. Fleet Command has approved a new shipbuilding program. The first destroyer designed from the beginning, with defense-in-depth principles. It will be faster, tougher, and more survivable than anything we have ever built. They are calling it the Persistent Question Class." "Persistent Question?" Minho asked. "After you," Hana said, grinning. The cadet who kept asking questions nobody wanted to hear. "The first ship of the class is under construction now," Captain J1 continued. "It will be ready in 18 months. I have been offered command of it, and I have been authorized to select my senior officers. Cadet Minho, when you graduate, I would like you to serve as my Chief Engineering Officer." Minho stared at the captain. Chief Engineering Officer, on a brand new destroyer. Right out of the academy. It was an incredible opportunity. It was also terrifying. "Sir, I am honored, but I am very junior for that position." "You are," the captain agreed. "But you are also the person who designed the defensive systems the ship will use. You understand the philosophy behind it better than anyone. More importantly, you think differently. You question assumptions. That is what I want in my senior staff." Then, "Yes, sir, I accept." The room erupted in congratulations. Hana hugged him hard enough to crack ribs. Bright Edge's glow intensified to nearly painful brightness. Even Commander Velthar smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "There is one more thing," Admiral Sora said when the noise died down. "I spoke with the Academy Board. They have approved a new course for the curriculum. It will be called Applied Human Military Theory, and it will focus on lessons from Earth's pre-space warfare history. We would like you to help design the course material, but I will be serving on the persistent question," Minho said. "The ship will not be ready for 18 months. You have time, and even after you ship out, you can contribute remotely. This is important, cadet. We need to institutionalize this knowledge, make sure the next generation of officers understands these principles from the beginning." Minho nodded slowly. "I will do my best, ma'am." Graduation day arrived. The ceremony was held in the Grand Hall, a massive amphitheater that could hold 10,000 beings. Families from across the galaxy had come to watch their children receive their commissions. The air was filled with languages and sounds that Minho's translator could not even process. The graduating class marched in wearing their dress uniforms. Minho stood with the other humans in the 5th row. There were 12 human graduates this year, more than ever before. The academy was slowly changing, accepting more students from newer coalition species. Admiral Sora gave the commencement address. She spoke about service, sacrifice, and the responsibility that came with commanding ships and leading crews. Then she said something that made Minho's heart skip. "This class has taught us important lessons. They have reminded us that wisdom is not the same as experience. That questioning is not the same as disrespect, that the newest member of a team might see what veterans have missed. I hope every class from now on brings us such valuable challenges to our assumptions." When his name was called, Minho walked across the stage to receive his commission. The crystal insignia that marked him as an officer felt heavy in his hand. He looked out at the audience and saw faces from dozens of species, all applauding. He saw his parents, who had traveled from Earth for the ceremony. He saw Captain J1, his future commander. He saw Commander Velthar, who nodded with genuine respect. But he also thought about the empty seats. The officers who should have been here but were not. The ones who died at Darvos and the other attacks. The ones who paid the price for the mistakes that came before. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Minho found himself surrounded by well-wishers, many of them students from other years who had heard about what happened. Some wanted advice. Some wanted to thank him. Some just wanted to meet the human who changed the fleet. Corvin approached with a group of Saurian students. Officer Minho, I wanted to introduce you to my classmates. They are all assigned to destroyer crews. We have been studying your defensive doctrine. It is not my doctrine, Minho said automatically. It is just common sense. Perhaps, one of the Saurians said. But common sense is not common. You reminded us of that. His parents found him later, when the crowd had thinned. His mother hugged him, tears in her eyes. His father, a retired admiral from Earth's own navy, gripped his shoulder. Proud of you, son. You did what every good officer should do. You saw a problem, you fixed it, and you saved lives. I wish I had fixed it sooner, Minho said quietly. We all do, his father replied. But you fixed it when you could. That is all anyone can ask. That evening, Minho stood on one of the Academy's observation platforms, looking out at the stars. Hana joined him, along with Bright Edge and Clear Thought. They stood in comfortable silence for a while. What are you thinking about? Hana finally asked. About how strange it all is, Minho said. 6 months ago, I was just a student asking a question in class. Now I am supposed to be an expert on defensive strategy. I am going to be chief engineer on a new ship class. People are calling me innovative and brave, but I do not feel like any of those things. What do you feel like? Bright Edge asked. Scared, worried that I will make mistakes, worried that people will die because I miss something. Good, Clear Thought said. The Luminar had been quiet until now. Officers who are not scared make the worst mistakes. They are too confident. They stop questioning. The fact that you are worried means you will be careful. Careful officers save lives. The Reapers are still out there, Hana said. They will find new tactics, new ways to attack us. This is not over. No, Minho agreed. But now we are ready to adapt. We are asking the right questions. We are not assuming we have all the answers. That is what really changed. Bright Edge pulsed with warm light. You know what I think is most impressive? You could have been angry when everyone dismissed you. You could have said, I told you so. After Darvos, you could have been bitter or resentful. But you were not. You just kept working to make things better. What else was I supposed to do? Exactly, the Luminar said. That is the human way, is it not? See a problem, fix it, move forward. No drama, no ego, just do the work. They stood together as the station rotated slowly, bringing new constellations into view. Somewhere out there, retrofitted destroyers patrolled the borders. Somewhere, construction crews were building the first persistent question-class ship. Somewhere, Academy students were studying defense in-depth principles that had been forgotten for centuries. Minho thought about the long journey ahead. 18 months of course development and continued training before the persistent question launched. Then years of service, learning how the new doctrines worked in practice, adapting and improving them. The galaxy was vast, and there were always new challenges, new enemies, new problems to solve. But he also thought about what Admiral Sora had said. That questioning was not disrespect. That wisdom came from many sources. That the newest voice in a conversation might have the most important things to say. Ready for the next challenge? Hana asked. Minho smiled. No. But I will do it anyway. That is the spirit, Clear Thought said. 3 weeks later, Minho reported to the Coalition Fleet Design Bureau for his temporary assignment. The office was located on a different station, one dedicated entirely to military research and development. He was greeted by a team of engineers from 7 species, all eager to work on the Persistent Question project. The lead designer was a human named Hyun Woo, who had 30 years of experience in starship construction. Officer Minho, welcome aboard. I have read your work. Very impressive. But now we get to the real challenge. What is that? Minho asked. Scaling up. Your armor design works beautifully on destroyers. But we also need to apply these principles to cruisers, dreadnoughts, carriers, and support vessels. Each one has different requirements. We have a lot of work to do. Minho grinned. Then, we better get started. As he walked into the design lab, surrounded by holographic displays showing ship schematics from dozens of angles, Minho felt a sense of purpose. This was what he was meant to do, not glory or recognition, but the quiet work of making things better, of asking questions, of refusing to accept that something was good enough when it could be safer. The galaxy was dangerous. It always would be. But the Coalition fleet would face those dangers, with better ships, better tactics, and better thinking. Not because one human had all the answers, but because one human had asked a simple question that nobody else wanted to ask. Why are your warships missing armor here? That question had saved lives. It had changed doctrine. It had reminded the entire coalition that experience and tradition were valuable. But they were not infallible. That progress came from challenging assumptions, that the best defense was not perfection, but preparation for imperfection. As the design team gathered around the main holographic display, ready to begin their work, Minho pulled up the schematic for the first persistent question-class destroyer. It was beautiful in its functionality. Not sleek and elegant like the old designs, but tough and purposeful, built to protect its crew through multiple layers of defense, built to survive when things went wrong, built to ask the question, what if? And in a galaxy full of unknowns, that might be the most important question of all.